I don't have a wow, that was the most awesome thing, but I'm always impressed. Like, and sometimes it's the smallest things that impress me. Like, it could be the simplest like reaction to a punch that wow, that really looked like that you got hit. That's impressive to me. And then there's other things like you could do like the opening of the pre-credit sequence of every James Bond movie. It's so
Mhm.
impressive. It's like the work that goes into that is insane.
So, Steve, welcome back to the podcast. We had a great conversation about Sambo the last time you were here, but the one thing I didn't get to was your work in the stunt and movie industry, most notably in the John Wick series. So, what is it about Sambo being in the movies? It does seem like it's the flavor of the day. It does seem like it's really taking the movie stunt industry and fight scene industry by storm.
So in terms of myself, I had always been interested in being involved in this industry, even from childhood. It was like a childhood goal of mine, which I didn't get to till later in life, ironically. But like pretty much all through college, high school, the goal was to get into filming, not into films, not as a stunt performer, but as a behind the scenes guy. I was really into special effects and storyboarding, and like I used to shoot and edit movies on Super 8
Mhm.
back in the day, and then I even went to summer camp as a child for filmmaking. And then when I went to School of Visual Arts here in New York City for college, I got in on a scholarship for advertising and art direction. But always my goal was to transition that into movies, like to kind of use TV commercials and stuff and move into movies. And then my life went in a whole different direction. And then back
Oh, so
in
you weren't necessarily initially interested in being like a fight scene coordinator or something to do with the martial arts. It was just movies in
yeah,
general.
yeah, just filmmaking. And
Okay.
yeah, in fact, like I knew what a stunt performer was, obviously, and but I don't know, it's one of those things that never made the connection. Like, oh, you do martial arts. Oh, you do all this other stuff. Like I feel like everything I've done in my life is kind of in this weird way prepped me for this job. Not just martial arts stuff, but all the other kinds of things I'm into. Like whether it was always like trying kind of crazy stuff, skydiving or mountain climbing or hiking or rock climbing or whatever, sailing. I've always been sort of outdoory adventure kind of activity person. And I don't know, just never made the connection until, years and years later. And so I guess what kind of brought me back to this world a little bit was YouTube, came along in 2006. I started a channel, started producing content back then, like, like everybody was. But back then, who
Mhm.
was involved, it was very rudimentary type content. But I quickly kind of got some work. I produced some content for Boss Rutan's old website, which was called MMA Today. It was like back in the day. And then that was in '06. By '07, I had made kind of a name for myself in the content department. And that's how I got my first real kind of in the TV world, which was for Human Weapon on History Channel.
Okay.
And yeah,
All right. So what did you do for Human Weapon? I've seen bits and pieces of some episodes. I'm familiar with
yeah.
what it is.
I basically was like a kind of a fixer technical advisor for their Sambo episode, the episode where they went to Russia. Myself and then also Greg Humphreys was involved in that, but and a bunch of people and what do you call it? Vadim Koganov was in there, but I hooked them up. They would send me the treatments for the episodes. Does this seem realistic? Does it not seem realistic? And I would kind of give them advisement on how the flow seemed like. Was it really Sambo like? Were they really educating people as to what Sambo really is? And then I hooked them up with Greg Humphreys, who got in turn hooked them up with Igor Kornoy in Russia, where they visited his gym. So that was like kind of my first foray into like working with anybody in real television. And then shortly after that, I worked on Tahani Tackles the Globe and on Travel Channel. And then on that one, I appeared in it. And then I went with Tahani to Russia to do, the Sambo episode there.
Mhm.
And it kind of just kind of just started growing, and in a way, I have two things to thank for it. It's like Sambo and YouTube, really, because even the John Wick guys, like my first time ever being reached out to by 8711, which is the stunt house that did the original John Wick, and now they're more of a kind of a production house. But at the time, it was like a team of stunt people, and they reached out to me. I had no idea who they were. They weren't on my radar. And even after I met them, I didn't even really know who I had just met. This was for John Wick 1 when they didn't even, nobody knew what John Wick was going to be. It was just some independent film. And they were looking for Russian bad guys. So one day, this bunch of folks came over to my gym. Turned out to be the 8711 guys and Chad Stahelski, one of the directors, and some of the stunt guys looking for bad guys. And I'm the one who sent Vlad Kulikov to the auditions for that movie, and then he actually got cast in that movie. But I still didn't even know, and then so like after that was over, that kind of just got filed away into the recesses of my mind. And then
That was interesting. That was an
yeah,
interesting
totally.
little. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was just like, oh, that was fun, cool, And then, but then in when they started filming John Wick 2, Chad, the director, had contacted me and said, "Hey, do you want to come in? We're setting up the production. We're setting up the studio in the city. Do you want to come in and show our guys some stuff? We want to give John Wick a more Sambo flavor." And they knew that they were already going to do a reveal eventually that he was a Sambo guy. So I went in. I was still non-union. I wasn't in Screen Actors Guild yet. I went in more as just like a technical guy. I spent a day with them, just spitballing with an uke. They would say like, "Oh, okay. So if he had to throw with one arm with a gun in this hand, how would you do it?" Or here's a normal fireman carry. How would a Sambo guy do a fireman carry? So we did that for like several hours, and they just recorded it. And that was with the supervising stunt coordinator. His name's JJ Perry. He's like legendary. And then he invited me back, like, hey, come back and hang out with us during rehearsals and watch what we do. And so I spent about 4 days over there chilling with those guys and just being a fly on the wall. And then I kind of realized that this is like such, like, the ping goes off. Like, how did I not think of combining these two interests of mine? And then kind of simultaneously, I had produced a couple documentaries and things like that prior. I did the New York MMA documentary that ended up getting distribution. It was on Hulu for a while. It was when MMA was still illegal here. And then one of my students had moved to Hollywood after film school to become, to work in the industry. And he was writing a script for a pilot for a potential TV show he wanted to pitch. So this was in 2014. He reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, you're a big time producer now. You had your movie distributed. You want to help me with shooting this proof of concept?" And it all took place in the underground fight world of New York because it was still illegal. So that was kind of the backdrop of the show. So we raised some money and we produced a 10-minute short film. And Al Iaquinta from the UFC starred in it. And I'd known him since he's like 16 or 17 because I used to teach at his gym out in Long Island before he was in with Sarah Longo. And he had expressed interest in trying out acting. And so we cast him in it. And because he was in it, that got us some notoriety and some publicity. He was talking about it in post-fight press conferences and stuff. And that, because of him, we got coverage by Fox Sports. And they did a whole big story on it. And we gave them exclusive rights to air our short on the Fox Sports website. When that happened, I got on the radar of, myself and Sean Fitzgerald, the guy who wrote it and directed it. We got on the radar of Darren Aronofsky's office. So for people who don't know who he is, he's the director of Black Swan and The Wrestler and Noah and just like big movies. And he was considering doing a TV series. So we had a few meetings in his office to talk about the potential of maybe this would be something that he would pick up. And the TV series never went anywhere, like a lot of these things. But we had a few meetings, and I met the stunt coordinator that works with him, and he was the person who really gave me the push. He was like, "You should consider stunts. It's a great natural progression for, your current career in martial arts and all this. And then, yeah, it was kind of like, and that happened all around the same time as the early, just coming in and working with the John Wick thing. So that was like kind of all these signals in the universe were like, hey, this is something for you. So that at that point, about 2014 is when I decided to do it. And then by the end of 2016, I was in Screen Actors Guild and
Perfect.
trying to make a
It's funny,
living.
I can't hear the word Screen Actors Guild without thinking to the Team America World Police, the Film Actors Guild
Yeah.
spoof of
Yeah.
it. Hello, podcast friends. Just a super quick reminder that right now, the arm drag and 2-on-1 formula is out. This is a 4-volume instructional that takes you through the arm drag position and the 2-on-1 position, which are 2 grips where you control the elbow and the wrist. And you can use this from the open guard, the butterfly guard, the half guard, the De La Hiva guard, the close guard, to mainly take the back, but also to set up sweeps and attacks and submissions and stop the other guy from passing your guard. Included in this instructional, which I did with Rob Bernacki, are not only the techniques themselves, but also the strategies for using these techniques, the combinations, the setups, and most importantly, the training methods, how to get really good at these positions as fast as possible. If you want to find out more, if you want to take advantage of the sale pricing, go to grapplearts.com/arm drag to check it out. It's available on DVD, it's available as an online streaming product, and it's available on the Grapple Arts BJJ Master app. All right, back to the podcast. So I've seen bits and pieces of John Wick. I obviously there's a ton of amazing action in there, and it looks so fast and so smooth. But what's it like to actually be on set? Like if there's a 10-minute fight, call it with, I don't know, what would be 100 cuts in there?
Oh, something like that. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, my experience with John Wick is very kind of like laser focused. Like, so I was actually never on set for a fight scene on John Wick. Like, and in John Wick 3, my job was really to help them bring authenticity to the Sambo training scene that was in the movie. It was about a 20-second training scene. But to give you an idea, like in terms of timing, so the final scene where John Wick goes back to to visit the theater where he was trained by Angelica Houston and all the Russian gypsies and assassins and stuff. There's a scene where he's walking through. It's a big training hall. The Collier brothers are in there. And so that scene was 20 seconds, but I worked on that scene for about 2 months, So it was like from...
When you say work on that scene for 2 months, what does that mean?
Yeah, so it wasn't like full-time work, obviously, but
Sure.
It was about 2 months timeline. So for Wick 3, Chad Stahelski hit me up and explained they were going to do the scene, and did I want to help? Was I interested in being part of it? And I was like, of course, So it started with casting. They wanted authentic looking Russian looking kids, to be in the kids, teens, young adults. And at first, the Collier brothers weren't even in the picture yet. They didn't know if they were going to have budget to fly people in for this, and like all this other, there was all this other stuff. So we started. I had actually met with Jojo Eusebio, who was the stunt coordinator on Wick 3, and said, because I knew the Collier brothers were sponsored by 8711, and I was like, are you bringing in the Collier brothers for this? Like, why wouldn't you? And they're like, and he said, I don't know if we can, budget, like all this kind of bring somebody up to New York and put them up. It all costs money. So if they could do it with locals, it would be cheaper and easier. But they did decide to obviously bring the Colliers, which was a great decision. And then, but you still needed about 20 to 25 other Sambo guys in the room to make it look like a training hall. So I reached out to all the coaches I know, not just Sambo coaches, but judo coaches or jiu-jitsu coaches, but that have Russian sort of flavor schools, Russian coaches or Russian students. And they were very specific. They wanted Chad's words, quote, white, pasty Russians. Like they didn't want Uzbeks or anybody from the stands or other former Soviet. They wanted kids that were skinny, that looked like, they were maybe not fed a whole heck of a lot. There was a very specific image they wanted for that scene. So we held the auditions at my gym. We did 2 auditions, selected everybody. And then so for the auditions, what that involved was coming in, and everybody had 5 minutes on the mats to basically do a demo. Show us what you got. Introduce yourself. It's called slating in. It's like where you stand in front of the camera. Hey, I'm Steve Koepfer. I'm auditioning for John Wick 3 Sambo player. Like something like that. Your height and in stunts we always say weight. Even in acting, they're not allowed to ask weight, but for stunts, always weight is important in case we end up on a wire or like we have to match an actor's weight or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we spent 2 days auditioning all these kids and young adults, each getting 5 minutes to demonstrate what they can do. And then all that gets cataloged.
So they go and they introduce themselves, and then they go out and with a partner, they throw each other around?
Yep. Show us what you can
And
do.
presumably they should have rehearsed this and figured out what they're going to show beforehand.
Yeah, exactly. And if
I'm just thinking, if somebody listening to this is going to be wanting to get into film and wanting to get into stunts, and what would they do to prepare for these auditions?
I mean, we told
basically
them,
have a highlight reel.
We told them straight up, like, listen, have you seen the John Wick movies? Okay, well, now you know the kind of, dynamic moves that happen. So give us 5 minutes showing us, a variety of throws and submissions, and show us the best that you can do. There was no pressure because we told them, like, listen, this audition is going to be longer than the entire scene. You know what I mean? But it's like you still need to show us some really good stuff. They're only going to put the best in there. And we also, you have to have a kind of a sliding scale of expectation, right? You're auditioning 10-year-olds and 22-year-olds. So everybody's going to have a different level of ability. But that was the idea, to pick the best people. So in the industry, what they would be called, there's this kind of middle ground between background and principal
actor.
Principal performer, either stunt performer, actor. It's called special ability, right? So special ability is like you're a background person, but you've got a special skill that needs to be highlighted. So you're not just a regular background guy. So like a lot of rookie stunt performers, their first jobs, or aspiring stunt performers, their first jobs are as special ability. Like, so for me, like before I got into the union, I had a special ability job on Gotham. I wasn't a full union stunt performer yet, but the stunt coordinator knew I was interested. So, okay, here's a job that involves a little more than just, doing something in the background. Let's test you out and see how you are on set, how you handle the pressure, stuff like that. So special ability is one sort of way that people can start working in their way into the industry. So anyway, we did all the auditions. We did 2 auditions, and then that all gets cataloged. All the videos get cataloged, all the waivers and everything from, if they were under 18, parental permission, like all that stuff that has to get signed, that all gets cataloged and sent to casting. Then they review everything. So there was a group with the casting directors, the directors, the director of photography, the first assistant director. They're all looking at this stuff and deciding who they want, who looks best. And then they choose. And then you get to give everybody the good news that got chosen. Oftentimes in the industry, it's like no news is bad news. Like if you don't hear from them, you didn't get chosen. But I still just kind of, I feel like I needed to let everybody know that they weren't chosen, because I know what it feels like to wait for nothing. And then you finally go to shoot day, and then that was like 2 days. Shooting that scene was 2 days. And then
and that's just from that, John Wick walking through while there's stuff going on in the background, really.
Yeah. That's like the scene, like that's like every scene in a James Bond movie, right? Where he goes to get his from Q or whatever, his special weapons. And then there's all this stuff going on in the background, people fighting, people shooting guns. Like it's the same kind of thing. Like Wick walks into this room, they're all throwing each other, grappling, So like basically in the scene, you had 3 mats. The center mat had the Collier brothers just throwing each other, right? And then the only thing I really had to do then was like, hey, a Sambo guy might use like over the belt grip or something like that. And then he had 2 mats on the sides where guys were doing newaza. And I gave each pair of those guys a 4-move sequence that started and ended on the same move, so they could do it as a loop. because I knew the scene was going to be quick. So I was like, listen, you just do this loop over and over and over again. So in every take, it's basically going to be the same move. So I gave one of them was like, you know, rolling arm bar from turtle to the guy stacks and pulls the arm out, which goes to a leg lock, and then the guy escapes the leg lock back into turtle, and then he can go back to the rolling arm bar, and then they just do that over and over and over again for the entire day, of the shoot. And then I had to be really specific with these kids because they were like 13, 12, 13, 14. Like, listen, this is your barrier. Angelica Houston is going to be standing right here. And if you roll into her, I will never get hired again. And you definitely will never get hired again, by me at least. So, but they were total pros. The kids were awesome. And then you have kids in the background doing grip fighting drills and, all that kind of stuff. And then I was in the scene as one of the coaches, and one of my students was in the scene as one of the coaches, like kind of monitoring the guys. Aside from that, my other role was working with wardrobe to select the kurtka and the shorts and the shoes, and to make sure everything was authentic. And then I also provided video footage from actual different types of gyms in Russia, like or not just Russia, but like I have video footage from Serbia, Russia, Ukraine, different levels of gyms. Like these are really highly funded gyms. This is really poor gyms, and so they could have a look of what the gym might look like, what that cultural feel might be. So that was kind of my role, not stunt related at all. And in fact, I wasn't on a stunt contract. I was like assistant to the stunt department, basically.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's just amazing how much time and effort goes into 20 seconds of a movie.
Yeah. But to your original question about the fight, prepping for a fight, I was the double for Eddie Marson on Ray Donovan in season 6 and season 7. And in season 6, for anybody who watched it, there's lots of fights. There's a whole underground fight club theme to that season. And so basically, television, you don't have the same amount of time as you do in film for prep and rehearsal. Oftentimes, you don't have any time for rehearsal. Like in Ray Donovan, that season, we had a big bar fight that we had to do, like a 4-on-3 bar fight. There was no rehearsal time, nothing. The stunt team shows up about 2 hours before everybody else on the location because we were shooting in an actual bar. And with the stunt coordinator, his name is Doc Duhame. He's a veteran guy and a really cool dude. His son is actually the double for Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And so we show up there about 2 hours early. We choreograph the fight. We look at the environment, the space, like what we can do in it, and then we choreograph a fight. And the art department is there to give us. We didn't use breakaway tables or anything. Those are the actual bar tables, the actual bar. But the art department will reinforce them. Like if we need to fall on it and they don't want it to break, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But we did actually crack their wall. We chipped their bar, and we broke a table and a bunch of pictures on the walls. All just because you're really kind of fighting in there. But the bar got a complete makeover from the studio, so it worked out good for them. But the point is we spent about 2 hours choreographing the fight. Then we show the fight to the director, and then that's it. Then you wait all day. It was a 16-hour day. You wait all day for the acting part to finish, because they have to do the whole scene that leads up to the fight.
Mm-hmm.
And then we shoot the fight, and then usually we'll shoot a master shot, kind of a wide shot with all the stunt doubles. And then they do all the inserts and close-ups and things with the actors.
It's always seemed to me that when there's sort of two styles of fight scenes in movies. Number one is when, and I'm assuming here, when the lead actually can't fight his way out of a wet paper bag, and it's just cut at 1 second intervals or even shorter. So they basically have him do one move at a time, and they speed it up. And they show it from so many different angles, you can't really follow what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the alternative. The alternative is something like the famous Daredevil hallway fight scene.
Yeah.
I forget which season of Daredevil that was. I was recovering from a kidney transplant at the time, so God. I kind of watched them all. back to back.
Yeah, the one take, the famous one take.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I think they got like one clever scene transition in, or
Yeah, they do.
one.
You can use wipes. You can use
Yeah.
wipes, like when, and then in that wipe, you can cut and people won't notice it.
But still, a lot of that,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, was it what, a 8 minute fight or something like
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it looks to be one coherent uh, beginning to end fight scene, maybe with a couple sneaky cuts in
Mm-hmm.
there. But it really does seem that that's the two different styles of movie fight scenes. Is it?
Sure.
Is it? Am I correct in that
Well, I
the
mean,
ones that are cut are to conceal the lack of any kind of fighting ability?
yes and no. I mean, that does happen. Like, it didn't happen on Ray Donovan because Eddie Marson was great. I mean, like with us, I did 4 fights with him, and only one of them I had to be on camera, and that was the bar fight. And when you're getting into like being thrown into objects and doing things, they don't want the actor to get really hurt. Then I'm sure Eddie could have done that fight himself, but there's also like insurance issues and stuff like that. But it's like the other underground Fight Club scenes was all him. It was all him. So the process for that was, because we were television and you're going like basically week to week, new episode, even when you're shooting. Um, we had 2 rehearsal days before every shoot day. So the first rehearsal day generally was myself, the stunt coordinator, Doc, and whoever the antagonist bad guy was for that fight, that episode, that stunt performer. We would get together. Doc would have his idea for choreography. He might task myself or the other stunt performer for some ideas if it was something that he felt maybe we could contribute to. Like in the first big underground fight scene was Tim Lachik, who was old former UFC fighter, Division I wrestler for the United States, and he was the bad guy. He's gone on to a long, very good stunt career after he left combat sports. And so that he actually has, from the early days of NHB, fought bare knuckle fights. So he had some really valuable contributions to like when we were coming up with the choreography. And the ending of that fight was when the ending of that fight, Ray Eddie Marson's character Terry Donovan knocks Tim out, and Tim kind of falls into Terry's arms. And Terry doesn't know if he knocked him out or not. Didn't know if it was a clinch or not. And then he steps aside and lets the guy fall flat on his face. That whole idea came from an actual fight that Tim had where he knocked a guy out and the guy fell into him and he didn't know if he was clinched or not, and he just let him fall. So like that came from a real thing. In the second fight in that season, there was like a standing kind of arm submission that the night before Doc had messaged me, "Hey, I need to have a standing arm submission from a clinch. Could you come up with some ideas?" And I was at the gym teaching a class, so I brought my student Tyga over, our wrestling coach, and shot like 4 or 5 different ideas, sent Doc the video, and the next night we looked at what fit best into the choreography. But generally, Doc has an idea of how he wants the fight to go. So the way, at least for this show, the way it was approached, first rehearsal, we would come up with the choreography. We would do a read through of the script. Sometimes the script is very specific about what happens in the fight. Sometimes the script is Johnny throws punch, fight happens. Fight is over, and it's totally up to you. So that will also dictate what happens. So the first day we come up with a fight, we shoot what's called a previs, which is short for pre-visual, which is basically like a visual a video storyboard. So we shoot the choreography, and a previs can be really, really, really well polished with After Effects and stuff, and some are just literally just rudimentary. Let's just shoot the choreography from over my shoulder, over his shoulder, and a wide shot, send it to production. The director, the producer look at it. Oh yeah, that looks good. I like that. Blah, blah, blah. Then rehearsal 2, usually Eddie would come and the actor, Eddie Marson. We would teach him the choreography, and then he would start giving his input, like, okay, well, his input with regards to how the character would behave. I think Terry might behave this way in this situation, or do this, and because he's supposed to be an Irish boxer, blah, blah, like all. And and Terry was training here in the city, was doing some boxing training as well. So then after rehearsal 2, we shoot again, send it to the director, the producer, and everything, and then the next one is on set. So I remember the first, to your original question, no, we didn't know, because Eddie Marsan is not like a fight guy. He's not an action actor. So we didn't know how he was going to be able to handle the fighting. So I'm on set, completely made up with all the bruises and prosthetics and swollen eyes, just in case I got to step in, because we didn't really know if he could do it, but he did fine. I mean, even if he could do it, but maybe twists an ankle or something, I might have to step in. But he did phenomenal. So
So you
my
were made up in advance.
Oh
Just
yeah, totally.
okay.
The makeup for that first fight was
Okay.
4 hours, just
Right.
4 hours in the chair, swelling up my eyes and breaking my nose, and all the prosthetics that I wore were modeled off of his face. So it was, walking around set. Sometimes people don't know who's who because you have the same stuff on. So I didn't have to do any of the fights. Like the job of a stunt double, a lot of times, is not to actually be in front of the camera. It's to support the actor. I mean, the biggest our job is to collaborate as a team to give the best product we can to the viewer. It's not about me being seen all the time. That's the last. That it's really about we're the secret guys, right? So
It obviously martial artists, especially martial artists who train combat sports against resistance, tend to be pretty banged up. I've got a long list of injuries. You've got a long list of injuries, and I'm sure we're not the most injured people we know. The only other category of individual who seems to be injured as much as us are stunt guys.
yeah,
Or maybe, I don't know, like extreme skiers.
yeah. The stunt guys I would say, are probably worse off than the average MMA fighter, honestly.
Why is
Especially
that?
so you have to remember that the average stunt performer is a lot doing. Fight scenes are the minority of what they do. The veteran guys that have been around a long time have been hit by cars, been thrown off of cliffs, they've been set on fire. They're riding. They're the uh, riding the wire, for example, wire pulls, the whiplash from that over and over and over again. Like I did a wire gag on this movie called Save Yourselves.
So, sorry,
Right.
just to interrupt. When you say
Yeah.
wire pull, it's like you shoot me with a shotgun and I go flying back in a way that defies the laws of physics.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's a very basic version, but a lot of like the fights on, where you see people doing aerial stuff, they're on wires, like Hong Kong style. Then there's like what you're talking about, which is called like a dead man. Or a dead man would be like, let's say, the best analogy is like the old cartoons of the pit bull on a chain chasing you, and then when he runs out of chain, he gets pulled back. That's essentially what it is. Like, so there could be, let's say I have a harness under my wardrobe, I'm connected to a wire, and I'm running after you, and you turn and clothesline me, bam, and then my feet fly up, and I do this amazingly beautiful backfall. That all happened because I'm running full speed at you, and we know exactly when you're going to stick your arm out. That will never hit me, but I'm going to run out of wire, right? Or that's what they'll do, like if you're riding on a horse and the wire, and then you fall off the horse, or like in my case in Save Yourselves, I was being chased through the woods by an alien, and I was trying to get over this stone wall, and we had exactly when in my case, it wasn't just a plain dead man where I ran out of wire. Mine was a wire pull. So we had guys out of frame getting ready to pull the wire when I hit a certain mark. So I was running. Once I hit my mark, there, bam, pull, right? I probably flew about 25 to 30 feet. We and we completely missed the crash pads. So I took about a 10 to 12 foot height drop, about 25-foot distance, just onto the ground. So this is what I'm saying. Like, I wasn't hurt, but for guys that have been doing this their whole careers, it's way worse than MMA. They're just getting, and there's way less attention to like head trauma and stuff. Like in MMA, there's more attention to that kind of stuff. Guys are getting MRIs before they fight, like all this kind of things. That does not happen in stunts. You you just take a beating and keep going.
Hmm.
So the career guys are beat up pretty bad for sure.
Yeah. I obviously sambo, judo. There's ways to fall correctly and to break
Mm-hmm.
fall. It does rely on having a mat. I mean, if you do a regular judo break fall on cement, that's gonna really hurt. And it may be better than landing on your head, but not by much.
Yeah,
So how are
yeah.
you guys actually falling? Like, what's the because you can't look like you're doing a perfect break
No.
fall.
So so you have to, the way that I explain, like we'll teach workshops at the gym for actors who want to learn basic prat falls, right? Like basic falls, not high falls, not even low falls, like off of a 6 foot platform. Like in my studio, we don't have a high scaffold because I only have a 12 foot ceiling, but we do have a small scaffold where we'll do falls off of 6 feet, onto crash pads or whatever. But when you're on set, you don't always have pads. Um, and so the way we teach at least the basic falls is we teach them the proper way to break fall first, and then you have to unlearn it. It's like, so it's really about developing air awareness and body awareness and how you land. And then, so let's say I'm learning to do like a seiuchi, which is like a jumping side fall. Like I do a flip into a side fall. Like we might do that in judo or sambo or something and slap out, boom. But you can't do that on. It looks like you're prepping to fall. You have to take the fall. So like you're not slapping out, but you are trying to land in the same kind of position. And like rather than slap out, you might use your this part of your arm like that.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of it is you could do the proper break fall for a split second and then dirty it up,
Mm.
roll like whatever. But sometimes you don't. Like I did a fall, a basic what they call a flat back. Like it's another kind of dead man, but not the running on the chain dead man. It's like basically where you're just standing there. Like the scene was where the guy gasses me and I pass out unconscious and I had to do like comic book style, just boom, just from standing straight to my back. Not jumping up into a back fall, just literally fall into your back. And I had to do it on like a stone
Yeah.
drive, right? Like not full cobblestone, not it was like the driveway to on a farm. So it was like like stones, like like people put in their front yard or something,
Yeah.
just like stones and dirt and stuff. And you just suck it up, man. Just
Yeah.
suck it up and
Try not to land on your head and then just suffer.
yeah. Yeah, and one thing that people need to learn, and this goes to sambo too, or judo, anybody, any doing falls. Like one of the things that I've noticed is people tuck their chin way too soon. Like if you actually tuck your chin from the beginning of the fall, it's harder to keep your chin tucked when you hit the fall. When you hit the ground. So it's like you're tense, 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 and then you hit the ground, and now you got to be more tense to fight
Mm.
that movement. So really, it's about that air awareness, letting your head go back for the fall, but knowing I'm about to hit the ground, boom, tuck just as I hit the ground. You know,
Mm.
that kind of stuff. So yeah, man. I mean, I just did a fall for Pose. It's gonna air next month when Pose starts on FX, where it was on a marble floor. And
So I had
Doesn't
like
get harder than that.
yeah, yeah, it was in a bridal shop, like this big bridal shop, and the scene is basically these burglars are gonna rob the shop, and I'm the shop owner. And so as I'm locking up the front door, they smash the glass. There's a big plate glass thing that they have squibbed, right? So it explodes all over me. I try to run away, and then the guy, they come in and they boom tackle me from the back onto the floor. And you have to hit the exact mark that they want you to because they set up the camera, right? So let's say they say, okay, well, the camera, we do what's called a Hollywood switch, which is where as soon as I hit the ground, I freeze, I get out, the actor gets in, so they can seamlessly go through the whole thing. And then, so I'm the one who hits the marble, then hopefully you'll never know it's me, because then they switch in the actor and everything keeps going. But you have to hit that exact mark because they know, let's say, oh, camera's coming in from over here. It's going to, as you're falling, boom, you're going to hit the ground. Camera's coming in. It's going to zoom in on the actor's face. Right. Um, so literally you have to land exactly, like sometimes millimeters, like your ear has to hit that spot, and then you have like a little system, like the guy who's tackling me, like, okay, so if we overshoot, he'll, like, in the struggle, he'll drag me to it, drag me to the mark.
Mm-hmm.
Or like in Hunters, I got shot under the chin. I got assassinated. Hunters on Amazon. I play like a Nazi that was hiding here after World War II, and then I get discovered, and the assassin kills me. I had to do like kind of a jumping flat back, and what they do is, again, they lay you down on the end mark. This is where you need to land. Two cameras. Um, you know, Maybe from knees to top of head is the frame. You have to land exactly there, and on top of it, you're wearing a hat. You have to flip your head enough so the hat flies off, and like all this kind of stuff. And Jared Burke is the stunt coordinator for Hunters, and he was like, I don't know, don't do a martial art type backfall, because usually you'll jump and then you move backwards a little, so you'll end up out of frame. He's like, don't, it's like just trying to work it out. Sometimes you just don't know, So I basically did like a wrestler's bridge, so I can put my head exactly in that spot, and then at the last minute threw my legs up in the air.
Yeah, the falling has to be brutal. I've never done stunts, but I did judo for years, and honestly, the thing that finally finished my judo career was not picking people up and twisting and throwing them and doing basically lifting people in a non OSHA approved manner. It was the falling. It was the landing. It was just taking break falls the way I was supposed to, the way that we were taught, the correct way to land.
Yeah.
And so even with everything going correctly on a sprung floor with nice tatami, my lower back just could not take the falls anymore.
Yeah.
And now we amplify this with wire accelerants and marble floors, and I shudder.
Yeah, I mean, for the pose job, and I'll tell you, like, I have these very form-fitting gel pads, but they're thin, like maybe a quarter inch, that will stay low profile under wardrobe. I mean, how much padding you can or cannot wear depends a lot on the shot, like, and the wardrobe that you're wearing. I didn't have a back pad on for the Nosferatu one. I didn't have a back pad on for the pose one. Because I knew I had to fall on my side, so I basically had a gel pad on my hip and my elbow. That's about it. But women have it worse. The female stunt performers have it way worse than us, because the male guys, our wardrobe usually involves a shirt and pants. It's like the female stunt performers oftentimes are skirts, dresses, sleeveless things. So they're more badass than us. They're oftentimes doing it with no pads. I have a friend, Tina McKissick, who had to get hit by a car in a bikini. There's no pads there. She said literally she had a tiny little pad on her spine, like underneath the back part of the bikini, and a little bit on her tailbone underneath the bottom part, and that was it. And then the director comes, you have to hit the windshield really hard because we need it to shatter. We need it to crack. And she said that she remembered she gets hit by the car, boom, up onto the windshield, cracked, shattered. It's also usually like squibbed too, but you need to make it look like you're breaking it. Glass everywhere. They said cut. She was able to move again. She was so excited that she did it so well.
Had not died.
Yes, that she got up and ran off set and realized she was barefoot, and she just did a real Die Hard, ran across all the broken glass in bare feet, and like, you cut up her feet and stuff. But it's crazy. So anyway, long way of saying I think the stunt guys get beat up worse than the fighters.
How old are you, and how much longer do you think you'll be able to keep on doing that? you got into it later in life, so
I did. I'm
kind of a unicorn, like, in the stunt industry, and how long I got, I don't know. I'm not looking to be like the most badass stunt guy ever. Like, I did get into it late. Like, I'll never be. I do a lot of training on the side. driving, stunt driving stuff. Like a lot of the older guys like stay in the industry longer, like when they can't hit the ground anymore, but they can still drive and they can do other things. Um, so I've really tried to take up my education, my rigging education and my driving education. So you want to be like what's called a good utility performer, which is the person that can get on a weekly contract and they can throw you here and you can help with this, you can do that, you can, you can be a safety personnel, you can be a performer, you can kind of change hats, you can drive, you can ride a motorcycle, maybe you have water safety certification like Patty or something like that. So the longer lasting performers are the multi talented, the multi educated guys and ladies who can do different things. But in terms of hitting the ground, we'll see how long I can do it. I feel good right now in a way because I'm less beat up than a lot of guys my age. Like I'm 52. I do have a bit of a niche. Like a lot of the stunt guys my age are more beat up than me. So to have somebody like my age who can still hit the ground pretty good, that's an asset. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it shows in the jobs I'm getting. I'm doubling, like I'm doing a lot of doubling of middle-aged guys, middle-aged actors, and then the other basic thing that I'm doing all the time is I'm either playing a good guy with a gun or a bad guy with a gun. you know so that's pretty much my career at the moment. But I still do aspire to be more of a filmmaker. Like I don't want to spend the next 20 years just hitting the ground. I want to work my way up in the industry and start being more choreographer, coordinator, stuff like that.
When I had Oleg Tartarov on the podcast, he talked about the movie he wanted to make was about the origins of Sambo, and essentially being one of the founders of Sambo.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
waiting
Yeah.
for that to come along. What are you waiting to come along? What's your dream movie that you would want to make or be involved in?
I don't, to be honest, I don't really have one. Because there's so much that I haven't done yet.
Mm-hmm.
This is my 5th year in the union, and I'm still very green in so many areas that I'm just every time I'm on set, I'm learning something new.
Yeah.
And that I enjoy that process. The most fun part of it is the collaboration that goes on, and like for example, like post COVID, obviously the world's a very different place on set than it used to be with all the safety protocols and stuff. And a lot of the concerns that I heard people saying were, are we going to lose that sense of collaboration and palling around and like that whole camaraderie thing? And I've worked 4 jobs since productions started up, and I haven't felt a loss of that. I mean, certainly there's protocols, testing protocols and distance protocols and masking and all, like for
You guys
example.
are getting tested something like, I know locally it's like 3 times a week for
Oh yeah.
most people on a set.
Yeah, you're getting like when I like let's say depending on when you get booked, but you're definitely getting PCR. Like if you work for Disney, for example, if you do a Disney, like Pose was a Disney show, it's a PCR test every other day until you're on set, and then another one on set. Not a rapid, a PCR. But that's the thing; they're all different. Like some of the studios, there is a standard that has been it's called the way forward. The nickname is like all the unions, the Directors Guild, IATSE, Screen Actors, they all got together and kind of agreed upon this protocol. But the productions can make it more strict if they want. So some productions like Blacklist, you're getting PCRs up till the day, but then on the day you get a rapid that day, and you can't go on set until they get the result of the rapid. Like Disney doesn't value the rapid test results. They're like, that's basically not good enough. So we're just going to keep testing you PCR every other day and then another PCR on the day. We won't get the test for 2 days still, but at least we'll have a more, a better result. And then if you were positive, we'll know, who you were in contact with. But it's very strict. It's like, let's say you're going to shoot the scene. Obviously, everybody has masks. The performers for the scene have to take off the mask. The masks are all collected. each performer has his own like Ziploc bag, and then or you can just stick it in your pocket if it's a quick
Hmm.
thing. But as soon as the performer masks are coming off, all the crew, the face shields come down. It's like there's a whole system. Shields come down, masks come off. Masks come on, shields go up. It's like this whole thing. Um, but I'm sure at some point that's all going to change with
Yeah.
the vaccines and stuff going on. But um, the bigger problem with COVID and uh, and stunts, for example, is they've scaled back a lot of the stunts in shows, and they've scaled back a lot of the need for background. Like a lot of stuff has been
Mhm.
rewritten because of COVID, right? So there's a lot of people not getting work. Like a lot of there's less work because of the way that things are being shot. They want less people on set. They want less, like for us, for stunt performers, less. They don't want to have to send anybody to a hospital. Like there's all these other things. So that's all starting to change. Like I worked on Blacklist 2 weeks ago, and it was the largest stunt scene that has been done in New York since the resuming of production.
Can you tell us what it is, or would you be kicked out of the union and blacklisted for telling us what's coming up on Blacklist?
List.
It'll be on the air in 4 weeks. You can check it
Uh-huh.
out, but I'll just tell you that there's lots of guns involved.
Guns,
It's
lots of
Blacklist.
guns.
Guns, and more guns. Yeah, but some
So,
pretty cool stuff, including a nice big 50 cal sniper thing. It was pretty cool.
okay. uh, so what advice would you have to some young guy or young girl who wants to get into this industry? I don't know, call them 20 years old. If they're listening to me, they're probably done some kind of martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what kind of what's the way forward? I mean, you
Yeah,
mentioned background work and then
yeah.
specialty extra work.
Well,
Uh, what should they be doing to flesh out their skills?
this is not to sound like negative Nelly, but I usually give very, very realistic, hard truth. And
Sure.
then if you're not all in and you're not willing to spend a ton of money on training, a ton of time trying to get in the union, a ton of you have to basically, it can't be a hobby for you. You have to be passionate about it. So I always tell people, like, why do you want to do it? I ask people, why do you want to do this? Oh, well, I thought it would be cool. Okay, that's not a good enough answer. It's not good. Like, are you willing to, like, for example, when I got in the union, I quit my job as the head coach for USA Combat Wrestling. I resigned as an active contributing board member. I'm still on the board for like votes and stuff, but in terms of um, any kind of role in organization, I quit everything that I was involved in except running my gym. Like I just quit it all because you need to just devote 100% of your time to trying to make this happen. And if you're not passionate about it, the stereotype is like the kid that wants to train kung fu, and the guy in the temple says, "Go home, kid." Like you really have to
Mhm.
be that one that comes back and sits out in the rain. Please train me, please train me, please train me. It's such a hard business. It's such a small community within the performing community, much smaller than actors. Obviously, there's way less of us. I think in Screen Actors Guild, there's only about 5,000 stunt performers nationally, and that's out of 170,000 members. The rest are
Okay.
it's like it's very, very small. It's very close knit. So you have to really want to do it, and you have to be really good at taking rejection, you know, and you have to be willing to know what you don't know, and it's just a very, very slow burn if you're going to make it. And then the chances that you're not going to make it, the chances are
Of
very
course.
good you're not going to make it. So that's the thing. It's like, are you willing to drop $30,000 in training and never get a job?
Is that a realistic number?
Oh, absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
what would that be? What's the first 5,000 on?
Okay, here. Let's say
I've
you
got
want to take.
$30,000. I want to
Yep.
become a stunt performer. What do I do?
Okay, if you get into the union alone, if you manage to get into the union, that's like a over $3,000 entry fee just to get into Screen Actors Guild, right? So that's that. And then let's say you have 5,000, we'll round that down to 3,000, which means you've already done your background. In order to get into the Screen Actors Guild, one of the ways to do it, unless you're some super ability guy that they fast track, you can get fast tracked if you have a skill that they absolutely need. But the general route is working background until you get what they call a voucher. It's like you have to work a certain number of union contracts before you can join the union, right? And every production only has a limited number of vouchers to give. So if there's 30 background people, they might only have 5 vouchers to give. You better be the one that's hustling hard enough to get one of those 5, you know? And oftentimes they're already spoken for. Like, for example, if the stunt coordinator hires somebody for special ability, like I told you. But so let's say you got into the union and you want to be a stunt guy. So $3,000 just to get in. And so it gives you another $2,000. $2,000.
I said 30,000. I'm trying to find out where the 30,000 goes.
Oh,
to.
yeah. But you asked the first 5K, right? So the first 5K,
all right.
Let's say you want to take your basic stunt driving course. Already you don't have enough money after you spent the 3,000. Like the basic stunt driving course is like, let's say $2,800 for like a 3-day course. And all that means is that maybe you got the basics. It doesn't even mean you're going to get hired. So, and you need to go out and practice, right? Just like anything else. You can't take the course and think that without practicing. So like, okay, so then you're going to get tune-ups. So tune-ups, tune-ups are basically like you go to the track and you book a few hours with an instructor, like kind of like for a private lesson or a semi-private lesson, and you practice all your sliding 90s, your reverse 180s, like all this stuff. That's a couple $100 each time you go do that, you know? Like I've taken the level 1 and I've done a bunch of tune-ups, but I haven't done anything because of COVID, like in a car, like stunt-wise, in like over a year, like close to 2 years. So I'm soon doing the whole level 1 class again just to do it. Because I need to stay fresh. It's not like a requirement, you know, just doing it. So it's another couple of grand, you know. You want to take a rigging class, rigging 101, rigging 102. That's going to cost money. You want to buy a harness. The harness alone is like $1,000, like a good harness, stunt harness, you know. All the pads that you will need, back pads, this, that, the other thing, that all adds up. You want to look like you know what you are doing with guns. You could be the most anti-gun guy or gal, but if you want to be a stunt person, you better know how to handle a gun. That means you're going to go start taking firearms training, you know, with all different kinds of, not just your, not just your revolver or not just your Glock or whatever. You have to know how to handle stuff, how to move stuff. So it's not just going to the range, it's taking tactical movement with your guns, it's like it all adds up. So it's just so easy. Acting classes. I got myself an acting coach. One of the biggest surprises that I had when I first got in the union was how many auditions I had to go to, just like actors. You may be a quote unquote stunt person, but let's say they're like, well, we don't want to hire an actor and a stunt person. We want to hire a stunt person who can do a few lines believably, or an actor who can do a basic fall, right? Mm-hmm. So I've been on more auditions and submitted more audition tapes than I ever thought I would have to the point where I was like, yep, I need an acting coach. There's more money. It's just continually getting your skills up to snuff, you know? And it's like when actors come to me, I think I can do my own stunts, you know? And then I ask them, okay, what'd you do to become an actor? Oh, I went to, NYU, got my undergrad degree. Then I went to Juilliard for this. And then I took Lee Strasberg training for that. I'm like, okay, are you willing to do the same for stunts? You know?
So is it a trope then when actors whose name we're not going to mention, Tom Cruise, talks about, doing all their own stunts and flying their own helicopters and doing this? And
it's not for him because he really does it because he's super wealthy and he can put in the training. He's really good. And all the coordinators that have ever worked with him said if he wanted to just do stunts, he could, But what people don't know is he still does have a stunt double. It's not like they let him hang from a plane without testing that first. So somebody's got to go up there and do it, right? So he does have a double, but on film that's usually him. I mean, but there are other actors who misunderstand, let's say, action for stunts. You know, like Keanu Reeves when they ask him, "Do you do your own stunts?" He's like, "No, I do my own action, but I'm not the one getting hit by the car. I'm not the one falling off the roof. I can do my own fight stuff. I can do my own tactical stuff." He considers that like action, you know. But when it comes to taking the hard hits, that's not him, you know. So I've seen actors, not big professional actors, but a lot of like lower level actors, like will have a fight scene where they punch somebody and the stunt guy is the one doing the fall. Usually the stunt guy is the person getting beat up worse, right? And then they'll be like, "I did my own stunts on this." I'm like, you did your own fight choreography. I wouldn't quite call it stunts yet, you know. I mean, even myself, I don't call myself a stunt man because there's too many things I haven't done yet, you know. Like I feel like there's a checklist thing. Like I haven't been set on fire, you know, I haven't been hit by a car. Like there's certain like, yeah, that's a true like stuntman thing, you know.
What's the most impressive stunt that you've seen or that you've been part of, or that I mean, back in the day, the high falls where they're like jumping off of 20 stories up, those were really impressive and incredibly bad for the people doing them. But I'm assuming that those are all done CGI now.
Well, there are definitely less high falls now because of CGI. Like you can fall 20 feet in front of a green screen instead of 100 feet, you know. There's also like more creative ways of cheating such things, you know, like show the exit, show the landing. You don't have to show the middle, you know. Like there's different ways of shooting things to imply that there was a high fall. But it's still impressive. Like Assassin's Creed, the movie Assassin's Creed, those were real high falls. They were setting records for high falls, but it was integral to the story of Assassin's Creed. I don't know. I don't have a wow, that was the most awesome thing, but I'm always impressed. Like, and sometimes it's the smallest things that impress me. Like it could be the simplest like reaction to a punch that wow, that really looked like that you got hit. You know, that's impressive to me. And then there's other things like, you know, you could do like the opening of the pre-credit sequence of every James Bond movie. It's so impressive. You know, it's like the work that goes into that is insane. I'm just impressed when people do an incredible job at what they do. You know, I'm not always impressed by the biggest, flashiest, coolest thing, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we started this two-part conversation on the topic of martial arts, and the same's true there. I mean, sometimes learning, you know, well, instead of gripping the collar here, I'm going to fold the collar and then grip it, and that totally changes your game.
Yep.
That's going to change your game probably more than learning a flying, jumping rear triangle into a forward somersault. I mean, the odds of hitting that consistently, or, you know, even winning a big championship are pretty slim. I mean, you really have to be sure. The other guy really has to be in the wrong category, or you have to be in the wrong category to be able to pull that off. But the little adjustments have a huge effect on your game long term.
And it's the small quote unquote stunts where, you know, more injuries happen. I mean, it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier about wrestling and leaving leg injuries and foot injuries more from wrestling than from footlocks, for example, right? Like it's the small falls, it's the little things where more people get hurt in stunts, I think, because it's considered the simpler stuff, you know, so maybe there's less attention paid to detail. And, you know, when you have a giant stunt, like let's say, like here's something that was super impressive, was Game of Thrones with the dragon setting everybody on fire. They set a world record for most humans set on fire at one time, right? So let's say I don't remember the exact number, but let's say they have 20 stunt performers all doing fire burns, and then they digitally replicate it so it looks like there's hundreds of people on fire. But there's so much attention to safety there. You've got everybody with the fire extinguishers and this and that, and like, so there's nothing really bad can happen. I mean, of course something bad can happen, but the chances, the risk has been mitigated so much because it's a big set piece, big production, big stunt. Then you got the little things where, somebody has to trip and fall. That's where people accidentally hit their head, like, and maybe get a concussion or tweak their ankle or, like, there was my very first job in the union was also on Blacklist, ironically, where literally, we had to film this. It wasn't even stunty. It was just like I was part of a mercenary team and we were chasing a guy up to a roof of a building. And for a few hours from different angles, we just had to run up and down flights of stairs, up and down, hugging the wall, doing the whole thing up and then kicking a door open when we get to the top, which seems pretty simple, right? But when you do it for 4 hours and you're tired as fuck, that's when you start twisting ankles, doing things like that. So you get a lot of injuries in the least, quote unquote, least dangerous things,
Mm-hmm. It's almost the equivalent of the sparring a white belt in martial arts.
Yeah.
Holy crap, I never expected that he would do a jump spinning heel kick to the nose as a counter to my armbar attempt.
I mean, in that scene when we were running up the stairs, and again, you're doing that for hours, right? And then they literally, it's like for just a few seconds in the show. But we were a team of 3 running up the stairs. The guy in front of us was the co-star, and then there is myself and another stunt performer behind him, right? They want to see him the first coming out the door because he's the actor. And so we did it a whole bunch of times. He has to kick the door open, and then we boom out onto the roof, like in a, he fans right, I fan left, like a typical room clearing type of situation. And so one of the takes, we are hauling ass up the stairs. He kicks the door and it doesn't open, and we just like smash him into the door from behind. It was like, ugh! It's like little things like that, you just don't know. Like even the wire gag that I did for the movie I was telling you about, where we missed the crash pads. Like it was all set up perfectly in rehearsal. Hit the crash pad in every rehearsal. Then when you're shooting, the directors, and this is a normal part of the process. Hey, let's try it this way. It might look different. Instead of you standing on the wall, run up to the wall. And every little variable changes how the rig will respond to your body weight and everything like that. And those little changes that we made shooting it, like me running instead of standing still, me jumping this way instead of jumping that way, added so much more velocity to the pull that we overshot the crash pads, in what's considered a simple wire gag. It wasn't like a big complicated wire gag like you might see in a Hong Kong movie. It was a basic, run and get pulled. But that's where the injuries happen. That's the other thing I'll say to people who aspire to be a stunt person. Just like I say to people who want to say, the people who come into the gym, I want to fight MMA. I'm like, really? Okay, let's see. It's going to take a year before I even consider you. Like if it's a green student. I'm not talking about somebody who has fight experience that comes to me and say, hey, I need a coach. But the person walking in, that has watched too much UFC and think they could do it. Yeah. I'm like, you sure?
You sure you really want to do that?
Yeah. And it's the same with stunts. Like, are you willing? It's not if an injury will happen. It's when an injury will happen. Like, is that something you can live with? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Can you live with getting beat up all the time? And like, so we do the basic falls for actors workshop. And a lot of the actors that come to the class are actors that I meet on a job that says, oh, I think I could do some of my own stunts. I'm like, oh, great, come to our class. And at the end of 6 hours of falling, they're like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do my own stunts, because you just have to be willing to get beat up, It's part of the deal.
Well, I think you've done a pretty good job of trying to talk people out of doing stunts and also more importantly, giving them a heads up as to, what it's going to take. I mean, it's pretty obvious at this point that it goes beyond, hey, I'm a pretty good kickboxer, therefore I can do stunts, or hey, I don't know. I like to drive. I should do driving stunts.
Well, I mean, look at me, right? I got in because I'm a fight guy. There's all different kinds of guys. There's like the fall guy, the fight guy, this guy, that. Everybody has a specialty. Like, and so for people like me who kind of got semi fast tracked in, I still did some, non-union stuff, but I did eventually get fast tracked in on a job. Like I didn't have to get all three of my waivers, but I got in because of fighting specialty, right? But how many jobs are you going to get being a Sambo guy? It's like, so it's like you just, I didn't get my first real fight scene for years. And I got in as a fight guy, no matter what your specialty is. Like I know guys that got in, like for example, I worked on that show Devs that's on FX. I doubled Kenton, right? He's like the security chief in the show. And there's a scene where he had to walk out onto the ledge of a tall building to stop someone who was threatening suicide, right? So like I did that instead of the actor, right? And so I'm on a wire just for safety, and the rigger, one of the two riggers that was rigging that, his name is Eddie Fiola, and his first stunt job he got in because, and BMX people, anybody listening to this who's into BMX will know who Eddie Fiola is. He's essentially the creator of freestyle BMX. And he got into the union because of that movie Rad back in the day, the BMX movie, right? But how many BMX jobs are you going to get? Right. All these years later, look, he was like one of the lead riggers on the show. And it's the same with me. Like, so I got in, I started this journey in 2004, and I didn't get my first real fight scene where I was involved in helping with choreography and stuff until like Ray Donovan, like 2 seasons ago. You got to prove yourself, All the other jobs was running and falling, getting shot, falling down, hitting the ground. That's the bread and butter stuff that you have to be willing to do.
All right. Well, I'm going to have to rewatch that scene with John Wick as we've been talking about it. It's been coming back to me. But I honestly, I missed you in there.
You won't see me there. I'm in there for like 2 seconds, man. It's like...
some people would take offense. What? You don't remember this?
I like people that were like, dude, I didn't even see you. You're barely in there. I'm like, I care more about Sambo. This is like the first American feature film or Western feature film that's highlighting Sambo, like legit Sambo, red and blue Kirkas. It says Sambo on their shorts. The whole, that is to me is monumental. I'm sure.
Well, but you're beginning to see like a lot more. Not that I know Sambo's more than leg locks, but you're beginning to see a lot more leg locks in movies and in fight scenes. And that might just be the influence of MMA, but that's been brought into MMA through various routes.
Sure.
Shuto and shoot wrestling from Japan, but that came to Shuto and shoot wrestling in Japan through Sambo.
Yeah.
So I think it really is beginning to pervade. Okay, I'll grant you there aren't that many movies with guys who have Sambo written on their shorts.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
But you are beginning to see a lot more of the stuff, like more realistic looking takedowns.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, in movies or films or television, there's these sort of pivotal points, like Matrix was very pivotal, right? That changed kind of the flavor of fight scenes in movies, to a more Hong Kong, forever. And then like Crouching Tiger, Hidden, like there's all these blips. And I think John Wick was a blip. It went from being completely, we're not doing the Hong Kong stuff anymore. We're not doing the John Wayne type fights anymore. And we are doing stuff that clearly is not real, but it looks real. Like the techniques in there are real techniques. Like obviously fights don't go like that in real life, right? But there's a greater sense of realism and practicality to those fights because of their actual techniques, but strung together in ways that would never happen in real life, So you're right. There's more Sambo style dynamic stuff in the fight scenes, but with regard to Wick 3, for me, like all those other movies, the average person isn't saying, oh, that's Sambo. They're just go, oh, wow, that's a cool fight, I just like the fact that it was actually like Sambo. Like they actually said John Wick is a Sambo guy. It was like, that was cool,
Well, hopefully it's not the last.
No, definitely not, I don't think so. There is a movie being in pre-production in Russia right now, a biopic based on a combat sambo champion. So they're saying it's like the first kind of sambo focused movie in Russia, even, about
Mhm.
a sambo guy, and a combat sambo guy actually.
Mhm.
So we'll see how that comes out.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe you'll be involved in that in some way. Maybe you'll be the default white guy, the
Yeah, I'll be the
default not so pasty Russian.
I'll be like the American bad guy. I'm totally fine with that.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Steve. I think that was a ton of fun and very useful for people who are thinking about this industry. Either to tell them what they have to do, or to talk them out of it if they're not willing to do what they have to do.
Yeah, if they're still considering it now, that's pretty good, And of course Canada has its different stuff too. Canada has ACTRA, it's a different union, and then I'm not entirely sure the
Yeah,
entry
if you
you
can't fight on
yes.
snowshoes, and if you're not good at the igloo fight scenes, you're just never going to get into ACTRA.
Yeah, you got to be able to fight on ice, man.
Yeah, two beavers, one in each hand. There was a little blip in the movie scene when the Filipino martial arts finally broke through. Maybe that's
Hmm.
something to do with Chad. I don't know. But all of a sudden, every actor was doing basics in a Wally. It seemed like.
Yeah.
So in Canada we have to do that, but just with two beavers.
About Chad, by the way, I don't know. A lot of people don't know this, but Chad did fight for real. Like,
Mhm.
and he and David
Eric
Eric
Leach.
Paulson.
Paulson.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was Eric Paulson's training partner for a long time.
and he lived in Japan with Paulson too, like back in the day. Like, those guys are in tight with each other. It's like, so when I go out to LA, I'll usually train at Paulson's a bit, and then I'll also go over. It's a lot of the same people. Go over to 8711 and train. Go to Paulson's and train. It's like the Inosanto, Machado, Paulson, like that whole kind of circle of people. A lot of them are in the film industry too. Like
Mhm.
my uke for when I went in that time for Wick 2 to just demonstrate stuff. His name was Eric Brown. He's a black belt under Paulson, but he's also an 8711 guy. Phenomenal martial artist. It's not like I went in there to teach them anything. It was really just fine points. But I think because you have real martial artists involved in all this stuff, they know how to they know the rules in order to break the rules, like what we were talking about. Like with the falling. Comes the same with fighting. Like, you can certainly take a non-fighter and teach them choreography to make a fight look pretty good. But I think it's always better if you were to ask the average person, who's your favorite screen fighter? 9 out of 10 times that person is an actual martial artist or fighter or trained athlete, at least. Like Jason Statham, right? That guy's was a competitive diver. I mean, he knows like how to train seriously for performance.
Mhm.
And he took that mentality, moved it over to fighting, and now he's like a legit martial artist anyway. Now,
Mhm.
so like if you look at all your favorite guys, they're all fighters who are able to unlearn what they learn, because you have to do everything wrong for the screen, like in terms of, like when you if you and I are going to box, like it's tight, or we're tight, we're not trying to do big dramatic punches, like, so everything that you do for screen is the opposite of what you do for a real fight. But it's easier to make those modifications if you have that awareness of how to move your body to begin with,
Mhm.
than teaching someone from scratch like how to look like they know how to fight. So
And even some dude who's never trained in his life, he's probably watched a bunch of UFCs.
mm-hmm.
He's probably watched a bunch of boxing, and that kind of establishes a baseline for what
Yep.
they know to be real.
Yeah.
So then if it deviates too much from that, they're like, like I've never trained, but I don't think that would work.
I tell people, listen, like, to your original question about what advice would you give, I always say, listen, the first thing that what you're going to do is fight and fall,
Mhm.
in the beginning until people trust you. And so if you really want to be good, you have to commit to the training. So I always say, join a judo school. You're going to be falling 1,000 times a week if you train seriously. Join a boxing club, get a coach to get your hands going, and then start spending a lot of time doing indoor rock climbing, just to get comfortable in a harness and on a wire, and to
Mhm.
develop the air awareness. And then get yourself take an acting class or something. Like those three things should serve you pretty well. Like acting training, get comfortable on a wire, and get your basic fight stuff. And the judo will help you if you never. It's like I said, you may never do a throw in a fight, but it's about the falling. It's about being comfortable hitting the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I've ever personally talked to anybody that judo has saved the life of in a fight. I'm sure it's happened, but I have talked to people that judo has saved the life of multiple times in motorcycle accidents or falling off of high places. So even if you never go into stunts, I think you should do some judo just to become comfortable with that three-dimensional awareness. And that's probably back to the Jason Statham point.
Yeah.
Right. If he's busy jumping and spinning and tucking and all that kind of stuff, and then trying to hit the water in a straight line as opposed to a great big belly flop, which would be bad. I don't know much about diving, but I know that belly flopping is not correct technique.
Yeah.
That would only help you with the rest of your life.
And then I guess the other thing that would be to get familiar with guns, like it or not, like you just have to be comfortable around them because you're gonna be around them. That's just reality. You could, like I said, you could be the most anti-gun person, but if you want to work in stunts, you're gonna be around guns. You're gonna be holding guns. You have to know gun safety. You just have to know. You have to respect guns. You don't have to love them, but you gotta work with them. They're like a tool, like any tool. And like on Blacklist, we were using quarter loads. So it's loud. They're real guns. They're not rubber guns. We're shooting, quarter load blanks, and you got to know how to handle a firearm safely because it's going to be part of your job. Even if it is a rubber one, you need to treat it like it's not. Just like the stereotype in every gun class, you treat every gun like it's loaded, every gun like it's real, and that's the same on set. No matter what the armorer does, there's always armorers, and there's a lot of safety around. Having live firearms on set, but I would add that to your training. Like definitely go hit the range, take your. I'm not a big fan of NRA, but their classes are great. Go take your gun safety class, and start practicing. Take a tactical class and do all that kind of stuff.
Well, there we have it, Steve Koepfer's 4-step process to guarantee you a lifelong career in stunts with wine, women, money, and fame. So,
no more. No, not in this era anymore. We'll just do the beating up part. There's no more partying like that. Well, there is, but I don't know. Not for me. When you're done, you just want to go home and go to sleep. Honestly, because I'm a day player. I'm like, I'm not like a rock star stunt guy who's going off on a movie for 6 months. I am like a day player, weekly player for television, basically. Like the movie stuff is an outlier for me. So for us day players, it's like you just want to. Here's the big question. All right, so they're shooting in Brooklyn. I live in Queens. Do I drive or do I Uber? I might be really beat up at the end of this day, and I might not want to drive home. So do I feel like spending the money on Uber? Okay, yeah, it's like all these questions, it's like, it's going to be a rough day. 16-hour day? Maybe I'll just Uber it, because you're a day player,
Well, maybe one day you'll have the private helicopter to take you over to Brooklyn. But in any case, good luck with your stunts, good luck with your acting, good luck with your movie career, and especially good luck with your Sambo club. Where do people find you if they want to either train quote, real Sambo or train, do your basic falls or your basic.
So you can follow basically for me personally, or, just Sambo Steve, one word, everywhere on Instagram, Twitter, all the forums, Reddit. It's all Sambo Steve, like I've streamlined that a long time ago. Thanks to the underground forums. That's where I got the original Sambo Steve when I was trying to figure out what to call myself. And then for the school, New York Combat Sambo, just search for us there. You can go to ussambo.com is our website. And then The Facebook business page is just New York Combat Sambo. You'll find us. And for any actors in the New York area who want to train with us, we're probably later, in the fall, going to start offering some workshops for vaccinated people again. You can follow us on Instagram at Breakfall Stunts, or breakfallstudios.com is the website, and then also Breakfall Studios business page on Facebook. Yeah, that's it. I know we've actually got a tactical firearm workshop happening in June. Our first one post-COVID workshop. My buddy, he's a career military, but now he's a stunt guy. So he teaches out of my space tactical firearm classes for actors and stunt performers. So that'll be happening in June. So if you go to the Breakfall Studios Facebook page and stuff, you'll get information about that.
Awesome. Okay, Steve, take care, and I hope to meet up in person after crossing paths on the internet for all these years.
Yeah, definitely. Me too, man.